今んとこ目撃地点はこの辺りに絞られてるな。
Oh my god, and when you put them all together, you create a spiral. If you get that reference, you're cool. But no, it's not Uzumaki. We opened this week with a meeting between all of the remaining Stomach siblings, sans Longo, who of course everyone thought was still dead. That said, Jeep was legitimately shocked over the news that Gloat had been taken out, but everyone else could give a damn. While everyone else could give a damn. Though sure, Liesel tried to make it seem like she cared, but come on, we all know the truth, including Jeep, who gave a nice subtle look of disbelief like, really bitch, who are you trying to fool? Granted, it might have been her instincts to feign compassion considering who her dad was. Speaking of whom, Book arrived to propose their future plans for harvesting dark treat ingredients.
人間の世界を丸ごと牧場にするというのはどうだね。
Yeah, I saw this one Earth show about some zone that I think comes out in the evening and it gave me some good inspiration. But yeah, I kind of love when the villains of my shows are just so casually evil to the point that they don't even try to hide it. Like, Boca knows that humans are intelligent creatures, hell, everyone in the room except for him were disguised as them, and yet, like a true politician, he didn't give two craps about anything, unless it involved some sort of political or financial gains for him. And while Nival certainly would have appreciated more test subjects, he already knew the impracticality of
try to take over the world.
Fortunately, the president had secured a special corpse for him with an interesting trait they could utilize. Meanwhile, Shoma was doing some of his usual battle prep of procuring some more snacks.
お菓子も食べてるけど、ご飯もちゃんと食べてますよ。たくさん。
Dude, you're just recreating those things you saw in those YouTube shorts. I'd hardly call those actual meals. But yeah, at this point, they're pretty much just spelling out things so much that they were practically skywriting who this guy was. On his way back to the apartment, Shoma witnessed a dude opening and closing a car door. Well, okay, maybe he's just trying to make sure it's secure. And then he witnessed an office lady standing up and sitting down repeatedly. God, these TikTok NPC trends have really gotten out of control. Also, lady, I think that suit is about a few sizes too big for ya, or you're trying to do a Futaba Igarashi cosplay. Later, Shoma checked in with Sachika, who knows some similar phenomena, though in these cases, they might have been more akin to mental breakdowns. I mean, yes, I know the twist coming up, but chances are some of these might have been legit. Meanwhile, Hanto continued his search for Michu's relatives, and finally was making headway when of course his search led him to the candy shop. He of course recognized the shop owner from a previous episode, and thus was able to streamline the introductions. The owner turned out to be Masaru Inoue, who of course was Michu's brother. He was also one of the last Earthlings to witness her alive when she left for her college classes in yeah, as it turned out, Michiru was in college when Bushu abducted her while sporting that Santa Claus beard. Yeah, the siblings were probably grossed out by the interspecies relationship he was in, when really, there was something far worse going on here. Anyway, understandably, Hanto decided against revealing the truth to Masaru even when he started to ask questions. Honestly, it was a good emotional scene that really got across the distress that Michu's disappearance had caused, with Masaru's actor just going all in on it. As a result, it made it clear that Hanto was carrying around a hell of a Pandora's box in his Photos app. It became even more apparent when Shoma just so happened to call in, and fortunately Masaru didn't see the screen. But yeah, Shoma was calling him, as while all this stuff is going on, he, Sachika, and Lakia were looking into the people who were acting weird. Lakia probably got the worst of it when he stumbled upon a guy trying out the granute diet for the first time.
ちょうどいい。こいつの腹を見てくれ。こいつグラニュートじゃないよな。
Yeah, of all of the victims in this episode, this guy probably got the worst, as not only does he probably have some broken teeth, he's also going to be checked into an insane asylum. However, while the writers were trying to stop the guy, Shoma witnessed a dude in a hood, and no, I didn't see that show, so I can't really make jokes about it. Anyway, we get back to Evil Riding Hood a little later. First, we had to check in on the happily married couple, more specifically Jeep, who was continuing to be one of the more interesting members of the Stomachs as the weight of all of his actions were starting to really come down on him. His turn on Shoma's hit list was coming up, and even if he didn't really like them, he knew the Stomachs needed Longo alongside Glota, and now Boca is probably just close to liquidizing the whole damn thing. As a result, he wanted to consult with his dead sister in his usually creepy way, but he drew the line with his already very messed up habit when it came to where he was going to end up putting the key.
今の私がシートに化けたらこの黒いガブがシートにつくことになるのよ。
Not to mention, I'm pretty sure it's incompatible with Gavv's based on Shoma's. Anyway, the main takeaway from this was seemingly to set up a training arc for Jeep to get stronger, with Lisa, I think, legitimately wanting to help him, if only to set him up for much more suffering when he's inevitably defeated by Shoma. Hell, I think even Jeep recognized what she was trying to do, but it's not as though he had many other options, so he went along with Liesel, and even let her brush his tummy mouth, which got him to do another one of those great little annoyed twitches he does with his mouth. Though to be fair, it's not the most uncomfortable toothbrushing scene I've ever seen. Ugh. Speaking of black Gavs, the hooded figure had one as a part of being a Frankenstein put together creation of Nivel's. He had used a granute that Boca provided that was some guy that just had brainwashing abilities because, yeah, I guess just some random dude had that ability. Actually, interestingly enough, they were another presidential candidate that Boca had assassinated, which on the one hand does make him even more of an evil bastard, but his opponent probably wasn't all that much of a saint either if they were going to use that ability. Like, come on dude, you gotta do it the old-fashioned way for politicians, which is good old propaganda. Seriously, no party is completely innocent, and don't pretend like yours isn't. But yeah, to make that ability work on humans, Nivel needed to transplant parts onto a mostly human body, which he just so happened to have lying around.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is a pretty good twist, as it does make a lot of sense. I mean, of any human, Suga was not only the only corpse he had ever seen to have been around, but he also did have a degree of respect for him, so probably in his warped little mad scientist mind, preserving the body and later Frankensteining it would fit in with his general MO. Honestly, I'm just glad that Nivel is actually building up an MO, considering that he's been pretty much the most least developed of the Stomachs, with I think even Sita still being ahead of him, and she's been dead for a while. As such, it was actually really refreshing to see him get involved in the fight this week.
せーの
Said fight was pretty good, as not only did we get triple rider henching, in super forms no less, but as that clip just showed, they had some fun with this one, which kinda makes sense after the last few weeks of some very intense story-driven fights. In the end though, and while the three super riders were able to overpower Suga, the tides quickly turned when he essentially inflicted confusion onto Hanto, ending the episode with the chocolate rider turning his gun on them. As the start of seemingly the final arc of this series, this was a pretty solid beginning, with them even planting a bunch of seeds for later. Sure, Shoma's uncle reveal was pretty foregone, but Nivel has surprisingly kind of stepped up after being pretty underwhelming throughout the series, really. Helps they orchestrate one of the funniest episodes of the series so far with his little experiments. I've heard people outright hate the mad scientist brother of the Stomachs, and not for being a villain, but rather a non-entity. And I get it, as I certainly criticize other shows for having some underwhelming villains, but at the same time, I think that was kind of the point of his character. He wanted to work on his experiments in secret and not attract any unnecessary attention onto him. Sure, the show could have built up a little more intrigue for him, but there was already a lot of other interesting stories going on, so it didn't bother me too much. And now that most of the Stomachs are gone, it seems like this arc is going to focus on developing him, and this was a good starting point. Him Frankensteining up Suga was pretty clever, and led to some very entertaining moments in this episode. It also gave us some pretty satisfying karma to see that after all of his manipulations, Suga would end up having his body defiled like this, and forced to being someone else's personal guinea pig. I'm certainly looking forward to see what else Nivel can do with his little experiments, and how it'll help shape up this final arc. Meanwhile, the other developments like Hanto finally discovering Shoma's uncle and Jeeb resolving to get stronger are promising little seeds for some future developments. It's hard to say what all of this will lead to in the end, but I'll start to look forward to it because overall, this is a good start to this final stretch of the series. Never be too afraid to experiment a little, as you might stumble upon something truly innovative or just goofy. Thanks for watching, and in case you're wondering why there wasn't a Procession review yesterday, I think it was because they took the week off. Yeah, I think it was like a buffer week in between the story arcs, so I decided to do likewise. Though don't worry, we'll get right back to our usual schedule next week. It's just kind of nice not to have to worry about back-to-back videos every so often. So, look forward to whatever comes next. Until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and, there's just been this guy. So, look forward to whatever comes next. Until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and, there's been this guy who's been dancing off-screen this whole time. Did Suga get him? Oh, no, wait, he's just doing the Harlem Shake, because of course they always have to do that.